The fishing news is sponsored by these fine partners.
All that bunker getting pushed around. This is up on the Raritan Bay last week, way up there inside Raritan Bay. Video shot and shared by John Berry off of Perth Amboy. Yeah, as one would expect, and as we noted last week, more waves of stripers still coming and plenty of action, great action in store for us for fall into winter run of striped bass. I'm Jim Hutchinson, editor of the New Jersey, Delaware Bay edition of the Fisherman magazine. Yes, we hope that this scene will come down to you in Delaware and in Cape May County, but right now, especially, the action has been in the central and northern coast, as happens every year. Along the beach in Bayhead today, October 20th, 2022, and there are still schools of adult bunker being harassed along the Jersey shore at this point. Some big bunkie, along with some young of the year class peanuts that are now making their way along the beach. Still stacked in the back bays. So hopefully those bait fish will start making a move, but I think we have plenty of great action to come this fall here in the New Jersey, Delaware Bay region. And in last week's video, we spent a significant amount of time talking about that first wave of big stripers, the Buffalo Stampede, and the incredible action on the bunker schools there for that stretch of a few days. Jumbo stripers in the mix, and yeah, big bluefin as well. This video shared by my friend Alex Condis, who was right there in the mix last week. You can see that giant splash in the back. That's 500-600 pound bluefin on the beach. Wow. Received a bunch of texts and emails regarding the live lining of bunker. A lot of comments in our YouTube section as well. And of course, the death of snag and drop. Well, let's turn our attention to another segment of the bunker fishery that probably warrants as much attention by our illustrious regulators. This video sent to me this week by Jim Stanella, who spotted the same bunker boat off the Jersey shore right outside or right along the 3-mile line. I'll let Jim explain exactly what it is we're looking at here.
We're wondering where our weak fish are going. You thank those guys for it. I'm sure this is the bycatch of that bunker boat that just went by. You need proof that they're weak fish. There it is.
Now, as a reminder, the bunker reduction fleet, those boats, those Omega boats, they're not allowed to operate in state waters. State legislation in New Jersey and Delaware restricts state waters to bait boats only. And the Omega scoundrels, well, they do their bunker pillaging outside the 3-mile line. That's where all that bycatch destruction may happen. Of course, as we see from Jim's video, it floats inside the 3-mile line. It is absolutely disgusting, all those weak fish. But if you've got bunker, then you've got a shot at a personal best. Of course, casting and trolling the bunker imitations will work as well. Found out from Ryan Jacob. He said he put his 22 Key West on the troll last week for this 51-inch striped bass. He didn't get a weight because he wanted to get the fish back in as quickly as possible after an extended fight. I will remind you, if you don't have a boga, you don't have a scale on board, you want to get a pretty good estimate on what that big striped bass weighs. Length times girth divided by 800. That will give you a really good idea of approximately how heavy that striped bass is. So even a 51, 52-inch striper, that's a monster. It's a great catch. Never hit that mark myself. But without that girth, you might not have that 50 or 60 pound striper. Now, surf casters keep working these open beaches right now. I would remind you to keep the smaller plugs and imitations in the mix as well. I know we had those adult bunker in the mix. Everybody was throwing the big heavy arsenal. But we've got a lot of peanuts now too. So it's not just the adult bunker, but we found out about a good shot earlier this week north of here up in Monmouth County. Surf guys enjoying some good action at a rather quick clip earlier this week, but that movable feast of bunker and bass should continue moving south along these beaches for a couple of months now, probably through December. But it all matters, you know, when you get into structure fishing. I'm looking at some of these old jetties, these old groins that are starting to appear. It reminds me of structure fishing, but bunker schools are structure fishing as well, right? So just keep that in mind, but take a couple of offerings. Make sure you have those small peanut imitations as well. Not just bunker, of course. Nutley's Joe Casal eeled for 7 hours the other night along the Navasink before his 3-0 circle hook finally buttoned up to this 50-inch striper that he released. Back behind Brigantine, Spot did the trick for Captain Andy, Riptide Bait and Tackle, as first mate Carolyn scored a 30-inch striper, first ever, caught on a Tsunami Sapphire XT Pro Rod Daiwa BG 4000 reel and released to fight another day. Live Spot. Of course, the artificials working in the back as well. If you've still got your center console or your skiff in the slip, don't miss out on the incredible light tackle action right now on those smaller stripers out back. Scale down a little bit. Yeah, a slot or an over is always in the mix. If you have your bonus tags, you have a good opportunity to take one home this season for the table. But the Bayside stripers are on the feed right now. Real clean water in the back since last week's storm and these offshore winds. But this action is in place statewide, and I imagine down along the creeks of Delaware as well. In fact, Captain Dave Scholl of Seacon Bay Sportsman Center, he loves this light tackle action. He said Live Spot are getting it done, as we heard from Andy at Riptide, but the Gulp Nemesis is doing pretty well as well on a jig head on those schoolies along the sod banks and those sedges. Of course, I love the poppers out back. Sneaked out with Hutch Sr. earlier this week for a little sod bank plugging at dusk before the Phils game on Tuesday night. Little guys, light tackle. This one took the Uzuri 3DB popper. Love that, as well as the Stillwater Smackit Juniors. Good luck finding those. If you're thinking about plugging up those sod bank and creek mouths out back this week, I prefer the westerlies with a high tide around dawn or dusk. I was checking the tide table this week for Beasley's Point on the Great Egg, for example. High tide is a little after 6, and winds are forecast, NOAA forecast of course, light winds from the west to start the day. That's on Friday. So that all coincides rather nicely this week if you want to get out back and try some of those sod bank stripers. One of my Atlantic County buddies, sod bank buddies, Chris Madison, he left the Back Bay for a trip to the open beaches earlier this week, might have been over the weekend, but he was rewarded with this beautiful redfish caught on a Northeast Jig Company offering on a Creeley custom rod, the Sod Pig Special. Go figure. Gorgeous fish that Chris released. Perhaps it's just about time to start thinking about, well, if those reds are around, maybe the speckled trout as well. We haven't had a really good run of specks in Atlantic and Cape May County especially in a couple of years. So with a few redfish in the mix right now, maybe those specks are in there as well. The weather forecast looks really terrific through Saturday, though possibility for rain on Sunday. But black sea bass and porgy action on the head boats has been keeping the rods bent and those bellies full as people bring in some of those tasty offerings. In fact, the folks from Ramsey Outdoors sneaked off to enjoy the bite aboard the Maijo earlier this week. Say, hey, you know, if you're in charge of things at your office, if you're looking for a good team building event for the entire office staff, a headboat trip with black sea bass is certainly the way to go to get in better relationships with your coworkers. Fishing always brings around the best relationships. In New Jersey, freshwater news. First deposit of stocked rainbows are in place as of last week, but the big news in the Garden State comes from Monksville Reservoir, where John Veda scored a 16-pound, 10-ounce hybrid striper last week for a new state record here in New Jersey for that species. Congratulations, John. That is a heck of a hybrid striper. Surprising numbers of good stripers to be found on the reservoirs of our region. You can find those hybrids on Monksville, or you can find some of those true strain striped bass out in Pennsylvania at Beltsville Reservoir, which is where we'll go to check in with my friend George, the Pocono Outdoors guy.
Well, hey, thanks, Jim. You know, that cold front that blew through here earlier in the week gave the fish kind of a little bit of lockjaw. So things have been a little tough. I haven't had too many folks check in with much success, except for the trout fishermen. Yeah, that's a trout. They love this cold weather. So guys like Eric Goodstall said, boy, he's really into these brown trout. They are hitting hard. Now he's out there fishing the Delaware as well. So there are some great brown trout in the Delaware. Other things, guys, you know, with everybody else in the woods is leaving a lot of free time on these lakes and streams, get into those muskie, those pike, those walleye. Lots of fish happening, guys. Be sure you check in with your personal best, okay? This week it's a short one from Pennsylvania. I'm George, your Pocono Outdoors guy.
Hey, as a reminder, if you still haven't gotten your New Jersey freshwater fishing license, perhaps you live out here along the coast, you don't usually think about it. Well, there are some good opportunities not far from the beach to take advantage of, for example, some of that trout stocking. This Saturday is your chance to fish free in the state of New Jersey in freshwater. It is free fishing day. It's a great opportunity to fish in the freshwater with no license required. Of course, that's a summer brownie on the cover of this week's digital edition of the Fisherman magazine, though there are plenty of stocked rainbows there on lakes, rivers, ponds, and streams this fall. In fact, we have the November edition of the Fisherman magazine coming out next week. The stocking goes on through November. We'll have all of the hot spots and where those trout are being stocked if you want more information. Also in this week's digital edition, which is our members only weekly, a reminder that the deadline for comment on that NOAA Fisheries proposal to implement a 10 mile an hour, a 10 knot speed limit here along the coast from November through April for boats 35 feet and up, that deadline is October 31st. My editor's log in this week's edition spotlights this whale of a problem. And if your paywall window comes crashing down when you try to go look at that article, it means you have to log in, or it means you have to subscribe. If you see that message because you're trying to access something at thefisherman.com that says subscribe now for full access, do so. A subscription of the Fisherman magazine is just $29.95 for the year. You get delivered to your home all 12 monthly editions of the glossy covered Fisherman magazine, but then you also get the digital access so you don't miss out on anything. Of course, that also means you're entered into the Fisherman magazine's Dreamboat Fishing Challenge. A Steiger 23 Miami powered by a Yamaha 200 is up for grabs, plus all kinds of other great prizes, an Ingle cooler, rods and reels, a trip to Capos in Costa Rica, all of that. And there's just a little more than a month to go in that tournament. The last check that I had, New Jersey's Dean Paolella is still in the championship hunt, like a certain wild card team I know. Keep fighting, Dean. Maybe a good slug of jumbo bluefish will hit these beaches at some point. I know the jumbo blues were still up in that Martha's Vineyard Derby up in New England, so hopefully they arrive before the fall ends, and especially before November ends. And of course, November is Tog month here in the New Jersey, Delaware Bay region. It's our fish of the month in the Dreamboat Fishing Challenge, and we will be in a 4-fish bag early in November for you guys that are looking for some of those blackfish. Hit the beach, surf's up, catch them up. We'll see you again next week right here at thefisherman.com.
And here is the Dreamboat Fishing Challenge update for October 20th. Thomas Lenny of the Bronx entered a 15.53-pound bluefish for the current 4th place position. We also saw 3 nice blackfish entered this past week. The largest and the new #1 position for Tog was Richard Prombrandt of Attleboro, Massachusetts at 13.08 pounds. Robert Chaputin of Seacliff, New York weighed in this 10.10-pound Tog, and Ahmed Solomon of Brooklyn weighed in a 8.62-pound Tog. The standings remain the same, however. First place is Rob Carazano, second place Dean Paella, third place is Sam Dibner, and fourth place is Garrett Weir. The Dreamboat Fishing Challenge is the Fisherman subscriber-only multi-species fishing competition with a chance to win a new Steigercraft 23 Miami powered by Yamaha, along with many other great prizes. Visit thefisherman.com to subscribe and get all the details so you can be part of the action.
Hey everybody, just going to give you a quick rundown of what's going on at the Coastal Kayak Clash this week. We had 1 fish hit the board. That was a 26.5-inch blackfish entered by Scott Schneider, which is good enough for second place in the category. But nothing has changed at the top of the leaderboard. Tom Hode is holding down third place with 6 points. Bob Wagner's in second place with 7 points. And Justin Oster is still leading the whole thing with 11 points.